Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. Heather, how are you today?
I'm fabulous, Julie. How are you?
I'm doing well. No complaints. I found some fun.
Good.
I did. It enjoyed fun in the sun, and I even got a tan. Now, people would probably laugh at this because I was born with a tan. But, oh, that's my little joke for today. And you know what?
Oh, you make me laugh. I like it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That was my joke for the day. All righty. Now we can move on. All righty. So today's topic is hiring a divorce attorney. So, Heather, having the right attorney, it's really important. It boils down to the success of your divorce. Am I right?
Absolutely. And it is, you're hiring a professional, you're dealing with a major life event, and it does affect your future, and it will affect the future of your children if you have them. So, and we're going to talk about like what is the right attorney and who is the right attorney, but it is important. This is a very important decision when you're taking this first step. And I very much encourage, women to, do your homework. But yeah, it's a huge decision.
All righty. So what are some of the things that we should look for?
Well, when you are doing your homework, you need to choose an attorney that practices divorce and family law. Number one. And, we'll talk about it, but I'll tell you, we have cases where the husband has hired somebody. It's not what they do, or they just recently started doing this, or they do basically everything, which we call door law. Anything that walks in the door, they'll be like, I'll do it. You're not going to get a great result, is all I can tell you, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the judges. They can read the law books and the cases, but they're just not going to be the best attorney that you could hire for your case. I don't care if they're your neighbor or how good of friends they are with you.
Okay. So, Heather, you're telling me that if my cousin is a tax attorney, it doesn't make sense to hire him?
No, and I find it to be, I think that would be malpractice if he allowed you, if he wanted to do your divorce. And it's ridiculous. It happens all the time. And that people who shouldn't be, or this isn't their primary thing, and they do all this other stuff, but they got like 15 areas of practice listed on their website. I would suggest you just go somewhere else. And that's, I'm very biased, opinionated, but there are many law firms and lawyers in Jacksonville and Florida, throughout Florida, that is what they do, divorce and family law. And so therefore, that's what you should be looking for.
Okay. So a divorce and family law attorney, they understand the insides and outs. I have no idea what I'm saying. They understand all the basics. They're familiar with the judges and mediators and all of that. That's what you're paying for. That's what you're getting, right?
Well, you would hope so. I am not going to tell you that they're all fabulous or anything like that. But I will say this, and this is why I believe this, whether or not they do it and how good they are, I'm not here to, blow anybody else's horn. I'll tell you that. But I will say that there is, okay, so, and this is kind of a little law lesson, but what happens, how our law is made. Yes, we've got all these statutes and all these laws, but through cases and case law, what does that mean? Somebody got divorced. One person didn't like the decision. They appealed it. And then the Supreme Court of Florida made a decision. That's now the interpretation of the law that we follow. Well, those cases come out weekly, all the time. And it may not always be the Supreme Court of Florida, but there's middle courts, which are your appellate courts. So there's decisions coming out all the time. As family law practitioners, we are reading those cases. We know, hey, the law is, not a full change. That's something that most people hear, but here's a new interpretation. And so if you were to, so not everybody maybe probably does that to that extent, but we follow and we understand, hey, the law, here's some updates, it's changing. That's our professional, responsibility to stay up with changes in the law. Can you imagine if we're trying to do, even if we're only trying to do it in criminal and family law, because there are a lot more criminal law decisions that come out all the time, to be competent, not even excellent, you wouldn't really have time to do much else except really be reading all of this and understanding, hey, this new case applies to you. So that is one of the reasons I say, if you have like 5 areas, are you really up to date on what the courts did last week on this particular issue? Very unlikely. It's hard. That's a lot of time, very time consuming. At one point much earlier in my career, I was doing some criminal and family law, and that was the big thing. I was like, I really don't have time to meet with clients or practice law. I have stacks of things that are happening in the law, on a weekly basis that I'm trying to keep up with, and that's a lot. So, when you stay focused and specialized in an area, you ought to know that area really well. And like I said, and that's what we do. We do that because we're not going to do your bankruptcy. We're not going to do your criminal case, and we're not going to do your real estate closing. That's not our area of law. 30 years ago, way more general practices out there that did more things than just one. But I think with all of same with, you have your generalists of doctors, but then you have all the different specialties, and you're just not going to go to the heart surgeon to get your hip replaced. I would hope. And I'll tell you, the heart surgeon's not going to do it. So that's why I was saying earlier, like, if that attorney's going to do it, you just got to question that, because you should know your areas. Hey, this is where our practice is, and it's not over there.
Okay, you know what? That makes a lot more sense now. When you talked about the fact that you need to understand those other cases that have been ruled on, so you'll know how to proceed with your clients and where they go next. That makes sense now.
Good.
We talked about this on an earlier show. If I'm not mistaken, it was last week's show. Look for an attorney who's going to ask you questions, lots of questions. And if you guys want to listen to that show, you can go to our website, womenwinningdivorce.com, subscribe, download, and listen. So why is that important?
So, Julie, my experience is the only way we are going to understand your facts in your case and everything is by asking you questions. And I learned, many years ago to make no assumptions, but yet you still have to ask questions, and sometimes more and more questions to get to the uncomfortable question. But I need to know. We need to know. And you may not want to answer, and I get it, but I'd rather you answer when you're in the confines of your attorney's office and it's confidential and not in front of a judge on the stand, and your attorney going, ooh, I wish I'd asked that question. I wish I'd known that information. So, and that may not all be at that first initial consultation. It's going to be over time, but you want your attorney asking you, well, where do you see yourself after this divorce? What do you want? Because, and I heard somebody tell me a long time ago, well, what if they want all this unrealistic stuff? Oh, well, I think I'd like to know that now and help you understand as to that may or may not work. But if I don't know what you want, where you're going, where you want to go, your perception of how this is going to play out, you're not going to be satisfied. because I could be doing a great job. We could be doing an absolute fabulous job representing you, but we're not achieving your goals and we don't know what you want because we really haven't asked those questions. So I think it's very important.
So basically, you're telling me as a client, I probably need to get comfortable answering uncomfortable questions.
Yes. And sometimes just like, again, remember we did the comparison to the doctor. I mean, they ask you some stuff that you probably don't really want to answer. Okay. So, but because it's confidential and it's important for them to provide you the services that you've gone to them for. Same thing here, where I'm not asking you anything to embarrass you. And that's the last thing I want to do is probably talk about some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But again, usually when attorneys are asking you questions, that you've hired in the confidential setting, there's a reason.
So tell me this, do you really explain to them, make it very clear, this is confidential? I mean, you may say it once, you may say it twice, you may say it multiple times, especially if you feel like that they're not really getting it, that this is confidential. Please tell me.
Oh, we absolutely do. And, that this isn't really on the, part of the topic, but yet it's so very important. That's why when you're like, well, I really want my mom to come with me. I really want my dad in there. No, 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 no. Because the moment you bring that other person in there, it's no longer a confidential conversation. So, correct. So therefore, and I get that, I understand, and it's probably more so, with women, just because that's been my experience. And I get it. Or your best friend in the whole world, maybe who knows me, who's the one who, said, come, see Florida Women's Law Group. But understand, we are going to meet with you without anybody else in the room. And generally, and then you have to sign a third-party waiver. If your best friend, your mom, wants to answer questions or ask me questions, that's going to be a separate conversation, but you have to be the one in charge of your representation. So we don't allow other people in, because what if they called them as a witness? And that can happen.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so, and I get, mom, dad, whoever, it's, a way to support you, right?
Right, absolutely.
But since it was a confidential conversation, they could use that against me, in the future, like if they were in the room.
It's possible. I'm going to tell you, it would be rare. It's a low percentage for sure, but I take that. I mean, there are very few privileges of confidentiality in the law, and this is one. So it's really important to protect it. And so I may want to protect it for you more than you want, but I am not going to be that person, Julie, down the road that, because we let somebody in, now we've got, we're going to ask them questions about something.
Okay. Well, I can see someone getting upset that, I can't, you're telling me I can't let so-and-so in with me. I need that person. They're my support.
Yes. And I appreciate that. And what I have found throughout the representation, well, this is true of anybody that you bring in. Sometimes they want for you what they think would be best for you, and you want something different. And I am not representing your mom. I'm representing you, even if your mom is paying. And your mom has to understand, like, I respect you. I know you want the best for her, but she might not hate her husband as much as you do. She doesn't want to be married to him, but she's going to still have to co-parent, and you don't want him involved at all. And like, these are all such normal emotions. I know we're getting like way off track, Julie, but like, I understand dynamics, emotions, like all of that. I get it. However, you are the client, and therefore, remember I know we talked about this, I think even in the consultation episode or previously, but you have to be ready to help yourself. if you're coming to our firm, you need to be ready to be an adult and let's do this. There can be support, but you can't go to mediation with your parents. They may or may not be in the courtroom. And so this is the time to start that process.
So we're talking about hiring an attorney, what to consider when hiring an attorney. So that is one thing to consider, as far as confidentiality, how seriously do they take it? So it's still on topic. It's still on topic. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. When we return, we're going to talk more about what to consider when hiring an attorney. Stay with us. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, another thing I thought about was, so earlier, I'm trying to remember all the shows. We've done so many together. It's been wonderful. But one of the shows you talked about, you don't really get walk-ins, but people may email and they definitely call you. So tell me this, how do you communicate with clients? When hiring an attorney, that seems like that's an important thing to think about.
Yes, it's a very important thing to think about and an important thing to ask because I remember, and I don't know, it's been a long time, but a client, had been with another firm. They're like, they will only allow me to email them. And I don't like emailing or whatever. And then somebody like, and I text back and forth with my attorney. No, we don't do that. But you need to ask. Because again, as a client, you don't have the experience. We do this every day, all day, and our attorneys are very experienced and, helping you understand. So you should ask, well, are they going to call me or email me or are they going to text me? Like, how are we going to communicate? Do you send mail, hard mail? And I think that's really important to ask because I think that some information needs to be delivered in person. Some information can be delivered, just verbally. Some information can be delivered, in written form. And I think overall we use all of that, but there are documents that will be filed throughout your case. There are going to be letters received. We're going to email them to you. There's going to be a lot of emails, but sometimes, a call is probably warranted before you receive that particular email on another case. And so we'll do that. Sometimes very often we are going to reiterate a phone call in an email because, and I can use myself, but I do this for both of us because I remember what I said. And I heard, what I remember I heard, and I heard you say what I remember you said. But let's make sure that this is exactly what we agreed to moving forward. I think that's very helpful because again, we've talked about in other cases, and we're going to talk about further in this, it's an emotional process. And there are some times I think you can only hear and receive so much information. So you might have heard the first half of the call, but the second half so it's really important to ask when you are considering hiring an attorney, how will that communication flow? Because if it's all and only email, I don't think that's effective. I think it too much can be interpreted, in a negative way when it's just in writing, or emotion. And we get that from our clients. If you're going to send us an all caps email, you're going to get a phone call because, and I don't know all the rules about text messaging and all that, but I know all caps means mad and angry. But you know what? Maybe that was accidental and you're like, fine, it's easier to read, or I don't know. But too much can get lost if it's only email. And I feel like the personal element of a case, maybe the tone of your voice, then hey, it's not bad. It seems bad if I just read it and add my own story to it. So I think that's important.
Okay. One thing you mentioned, no texting. Makes sense to me, but tell me, why not?
now we may be on the way to court and call you from our cell phone that's linked to the office phone to talk to you before hearing or whatever, but texting is just not a mode from a personal standpoint as the staff here is going to communicate with our clients. I don't believe it is a secure method by which to communicate through, and I don't think it's, very professional. And some, again, smaller firms, one attorney, that's going to be different. This is a large firm, and if it's not in a method that allows the paralegal to know what you've talked about, that can hurt your case, because you don't just have just an attorney, you have a team, and we want to know if, your attorney were to get sick, as we all experienced in the pandemic. Things happen quick, and if something got really sick really quickly, and we don't have privy to that information, now we got to get up to speed. That's not best for your case. I mean, at the end of the day, that's it. And, it's more of it is a professionalism team. That's for our office. We don't expect that we're going to be texting back and forth. We just don't. Some firms, might have a texting program that it goes from the computer, but we don't use that. It's just, we prefer, like, if it's something that we want others to know, we do memos. We want the team to know what you and I talked about, so they can follow up as necessary.
Okay, that makes sense. So when I'm hiring an attorney, what are some other questions that I need to ask?
I really think you should ask if they have experience, let's say, in relocation. Like, how many relocations have you done? Like, are you successful? Have you dealt with, cases where there's a multi-million-dollar business? Have you done with cases and dealt with the military? Because there are some really specific things there. Things with issues of domestic violence or potentially criminal charges that, involve my spouse. All those kinds of things, we've talked about the narcissists and things like that. Ask, and I think that's a valid question. I've always been, all our firm, right? We are happy to answer those questions.
Okay. Relocation. Obviously, we talked about that. And okay, Julie, don't get sidetracked. Don't get sidetracked. I didn't even think about that question. I did not. Alrighty. Another one is, how many people are going to be working on my case? Like, will I get the whole firm working on my case only? That's a good one.
Sure, you should ask that. Because if that's your expectation, then you might be let down. So if you have certain expectations, I do think you should voice those. I have had, and I'm quite candidly, somebody said, well, I don't want to hire you unless I only talk to you and always talk to you. And that's not the way, I don't think this is the good firm. Go to a, one person shop, a one lawyer shop. They'll probably talk to you on their cell phone all the time and do everything. Our practice, our firm, we work as a team, and you have a paralegal, you have a legal assistant, you have a legal team working on your case so that you're not billed at the attorney rate for everything that's done. There are lower rates for other levels of professionals, and they're better equipped to answer those questions. And really, as attorneys, we're in court, we're in hearings, depositions, so many times we are, not in the office, or we're in a meeting that cannot be disturbed, or in a hearing. We can't immediately answer your question. Maybe not even within, you could be in a 2-day mediation or 3 or 4 day trial. You want to know that, hey, there's a paralegal in that office and probably a backup attorney, that if I need answers to questions, those are going to happen. So and I think that is important to know, because you may say, hey, I like that one-on-one, just me and the attorney, we're best friends, we're going to talk all the time. Great. But I would ask, well, what if you're in a trial? Like, are you going to still talk to me? What if you're in a mediation? And that's good to know, because then if they're in the mediation with you, sorry, I got to talk to some other clients. So I'm going to, do that. All good things to ask.
Okay. Again, so many questions. Is that professional? I don't, it doesn't seem like it is. Hopefully I'm not being judgy, but is that professional, to say, if I am in a mediation with someone, I'm going to take somebody else's phone call? I mean, it doesn't seem like it is.
I don't, yeah, no, I certainly don't think that it is. It really, the way it works for me, sometimes there's downtime in mediation, and I've had judges say you have to appear, and we explain to the client, we're not billing you for this time. But for me, and for most of my attorneys here, we kind of operate the same way. We're in it, man. When we're with you, it's only you. I mean, my family knows, call the office. Like, don't call, like, we are immersed, and it's difficult for most, of our attorneys, and in my experience, it could be just, to switch gears really quickly and then be all in on another case. So yeah, so that can be difficult, and that's why I would say, and then of course it's absolutely impossible if you're in a hearing in front of a judge and in a trial. My family knows, like, hey, when we've been in trial, like, you better just call, like, I can't take a break unless somebody calls the judge's office and says there's an emergency. And there's definitions of an emergency, and, needing lunch money, or can I go to somebody's house after school to play, doesn't cut it in my house. But, there are certainly other ones. And so when we are with clients, and with most attorneys are with clients, we're with you. We're not taking other calls. We are not getting interrupted. No, this is about your case and whatever's going on, which I do think most clients expect. And I think that they should.
Should you also ask, when you're hiring an attorney, should you also ask about strategy?
Yes, ask them, how do you develop it? How do you figure out what we're going to do and when we're going to do it? And, they should be able to tell you, hey, this is our plan. This is how we develop your strategy, and you get your strategic plan. And then we address it every 60 days, sometimes a little bit different, because if we have, our outcomes and goals listed as these top 3, and then next month you say, hey, something's changed, we're going to have to redo your, strategic plan a little bit, or maybe not. But yeah, you should ask. Be an educated consumer to the extent you can. This is not a friendship. You are paying for services. And it's, again, educating yourself. What should I expect? How are you going to do this? I think those are valid questions. How do you bill? When am I going to see my bill? Am I going to get a bill? You should get a bill every month, maybe twice a month. We bill our clients every 2 weeks, just so that they see what's going on. Like, there's a lot going on. Sometimes, maybe some cases, like, there may be 30 days where nothing is happening, but there's a lot happening. And if you're not getting billed, I would be concerned. I know that sounds silly. You're like, well, if I'm not getting billed, Heather, I'm good. I'm not calling asking for a bill. But, you should see what's happening in your case through your bill.
That's a good point, because I was wondering, no bill, does that mean that there's nothing happening, or there's just something wrong with the accountant?
I don't know. Every offices operate differently. I find the bills to be very reflective, because we're very detailed, so that you are, they are aware of what's going on, and then it helps you anticipate. You'll see, oh, okay, well, we had a lot happen this month, and maybe a lot's going to happen next month. Like, this is just we're in it, and there are some periods of time where there's not as much activity.
Okay, so a detailed bill, it seems like that's something that you should want to have, so I know that I'm getting my money's worth.
Yeah, and you can go back and know, what things have been done, and sometimes maybe you can read it and be like, well, I thought we talked about doing XYZ. It's also a way that improves communication. Because, yeah, if you get the bill, please read it, because it may pose questions. And, sometimes people are like, oh, I haven't looked at the bill in 6 months. Well, again, that's the part where you need to take some responsibility for your case and be engaged because we need that engagement in order to do our best for you.
You've answered so many questions. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. When we return, we're going to talk about how to work with your attorney. Stay with us. Welcome back to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, how to work with your attorney. I mean, it's good to be comfortable with them, right? Because again, they're getting all in your business and you need that.
Absolutely. You want to, there's a level of trust and rapport that is necessary and important. And yeah, I mean, it's not like we're going out for drinks or anything like that, but you want that rapport and trust, because just similarly before, if your attorney could be doing a great job, but they haven't asked you what you want, so then you're not going to be satisfied. So, if you don't trust this person who is, directing your representation, you're not going to be satisfied, even though it could be a great result, because that trust is gone. So that is or it never existed. You're just like, wow, I figured this is who I'd, go to, but you don't really feel as though you're on the same page. So yeah, I find that very important.
Okay, that's good. So working with your attorney, you're going to go through so many issues and you're going to discuss the importance of each issue. Like you said, it's not going to be what they want. It should be about what you want.
Yes. And now, again, with, you need to express what you want. I feel like that's the important thing, because I may, I'll just use an example. Like I want, I want him to buy me a new, Porsche every year. Okay. That sounds good to me too. I agree, Julie. I would like that too. However, it's unlikely through this case, but let's talk it through and let me tell you what I think could happen. What are you willing to give up for that? Because, I know you're shocked, like nothing. It's and I'm just talking in a situation of if we're trying to work out settlement and or even trial, I think it's important as the client to share truly what they want, their expectations, because then we have an honest conversation. I say, all right, that's not happening. Period. The end. Not happening. Judge will never give you that. Can we ask for it in mediation? Maybe, but you better be willing to give up some. And then it's like, so let's move on and don't bring that up again, which I say that teasingly, because then clients are like, I know you said I couldn't get it. I was like, I know, but you can't let it go. And you don't ask me every time. And I've told you no. So let's move on to the next issue. Okay. I see a possibility, this and this, or do these things exist? ABD, ABCDE, that is how you really, to me, that's the best way to communicate, because if I don't ask, I don't know. And what if your expectations are so low that I have to be like, honey, come on now, you're entitled to way more, and we're going to put you in a better position. So I think that when we talk about working with your attorney, it's that kind of rapport. And if they're not asking you these kinds of questions, you're not going to get what you want, because, if you don't ask, how are you going to even know? I mean, that's always, I say that all the time. Like, you can give me a chance to say no, but if you don't ask, how do I know? I'm not a mind reader, nor is the court, nor is anything. So it's just this open communication that allows one, as attorneys, to us to understand where you're coming from, because you may have completely unrealistic expectations. I mean, Julie, you and I've talked about things and you're like shocked that wouldn't happen, but because you don't know. And I don't judge you or say anything less of anybody. I'm like, yeah, that would be maybe what I expect. And shoot, even me, I do know. And I'm like, I agree with you, but that's completely unrealistic and not going to happen. So let's figure out, let me help you understand what other scenarios might happen? And, how do we live with that? How do you reconcile with that? And I think that's how, when you work with your attorney, you begin to understand a little bit more about the law. And, we talked earlier, the different judges have different perspectives. They all follow the law, but different facts kind of can sway them in one way more than another. So it's important that when you're working with your attorney that they're able to tell you, well, this judge rarely does this. This judge always wants 50-50 on the time sharing. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, hey, he's never going to see the kids, which, we wouldn't, unless that we thought that was a possibility, and in the best interest of the children. But so that's when you work with your attorney, and I know sometimes things get emotional, of course, in a divorce, and emotions get high when certain decisions and things are done. But remember, you've got a team on your side, and yelling and swearing at us is that's not going to work. So we don't do that to you, and we certainly don't appreciate that kind of communication. That would probably be a good way to end our relationship.
Okay, that goes back to firing the client. You can really do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not anything we ever want to do. So kind of when we, like that episode on consultations, that's why it's really important to spend the time so that, hopefully we're both making the right decision before we enter into this, attorney-client relationship. But sometimes, they, and this is something that was said to me many years ago, by a business coach. And they said, you are paying me to advise you and help you, achieve your goals. And so if you're not going to do what I advise you to do, you have to question, why are we working together? Because that's on you. And I think that's maybe not the most eloquent way to say it, but if you're not going to listen to me and take my advice or an advice of any of our attorneys here, which that's fine, but then we're not going to work together, because then why are we here? It just is. It's either you trust my advice and I've given you some options and you pick one, or maybe you go elsewhere. I just think that boils down to what we talked about earlier: trust, communication, all these things. And I get it. You're scared. Maybe you don't want to, but like at the end of the day, you've got to work with your attorney. And if you don't trust their advice, then you need to get another attorney. Or you need to question yourself as to, are you not accepting reality of the divorce?
Okay. And the reason why I asked that question is because I thought if you had an attorney, the judge would say, oh, no, you have to stick with that person because we're so far in the process. Does that make sense? Have you heard that?
Oh, and it does. And that's a very hard thing. Like, I know I had said that like before. I didn't want it to sound like that is not a decision that anyone really would ever take lightly. From our standpoint, we've invested time and money, and I know that is going to be difficult to transition elsewhere. But you have a right as a client to choose your attorney, and we as attorneys have ethical obligations that if we feel there's some compromises in our representation with that, we don't feel we can proceed forward, or we also have a right to hold you to your contract, which is your retainer agreement. So if you're not paying your attorney, they most likely aren't going to continue to work for you.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. You're not giving me my money.
I know you're saying it makes sense, but you would be surprised, kind of like every time you go to the grocery store, you got to pay. Even if you've already spent $1,000 this month, you might have to, that's just the way it works. And open communication about the costs and things like that, they're important. And so that kind of goes back to the billing and all that. Like, you got to talk about it. Not talking about it doesn't make anything go away.
No, it absolutely does not. You're still gonna get that bill. All righty.
Yeah, and many times, kind of, I want to talk just in working with your attorney. We are your advocate. Your attorney is on your side, but sometimes we might have to again give you some harsh truths, some advice that we're saying, listen, you want to argue on this issue and you're not willing to compromise on this issue. I don't know how the judge will decide. Maybe it's a 50-50. I really can't predict it, but this is probably how much it's going to cost you for us to fight this one issue versus maybe compromising. So sometimes we just have to tell you, listen, you can pay our firm to continue to do this. But I don't know that you're going to be happy with that result because you might not get it and then you've spent the money. And I think those are good conversations to have with your attorney as well. And you want an attorney to tell you that. Okay, you can pay him or pay me. What do you want to do? And, because our goal as a firm is to get you where you want to be, not just keep spending your money, fees, without having that conversation with you. Like maybe it's time to make some compromises because you keep spending this money on us, but I don't see us getting closer to your goal versus maybe there's another approach.
But you won't give up at the beginning, right? That's it has to get to that point.
Right. I mean, it just does. Like sometimes there just may be those hard conversations, but from our standpoint and as an attorney and just as a human being, I think it's important to say, look at what you're really fighting about and maybe just take a step back because I'm the objective one. I'm sitting here looking at it and thinking we're stuck on this issue and I don't know how much it's going to matter to you in 2 years or even 6 months. And it may, and I may say, let it go.
And you know what? It sounds like that's also where the trust, the trust of your attorney comes in, because if you truly trust them, if you're comfortable with them, you should be able to accept that advice.
Correct, because there are some issues. I would say if you compromise on this now, usually those are issues maybe with time sharing with children or property, money. I'll say there is not a redo. It's not, I really don't, and this is what clients may hear. I'm not saying this is what an attorney told them. And I think you can appreciate the difference. And I hear what I want to hear a lot. So I can just say that easily. But, and a client will come to me and say, well, he told me, or the attorney told me to agree to this because they said we can go back later and change it. I don't think that's good advice. And I don't think that's a great, so I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about things that are, to say, well, we'll change it later. I'm talking about the couch, the brand new TV, blah, things like that are at some point, or one extra day with the kids. Sometimes I'm like, if you can step outside, and if we're going to go to a third party to make this decision, meaning a judge, I don't know if we're going to be successful on this particular issue. And you might have more peace if you can let it go.
Wow. Any parting words, Heather? What else? Anything else you'd like to add?
Just that, well, of course, I appreciate everybody listening, and I hope this is helpful on how, when you're hiring an attorney and working with an attorney. And I recognize, and even if you've worked with attorneys before, when dealing with family law issues and your finances and your children and your future, those are big things. And it's really important to spend the time to hire the right firm for you. Perfect. Call us if you need an attorney or, have questions about the process, because we are here to help you through this.
Perfect way to end. Heather, I will see you next time.
Absolutely, Julie. I look forward to it, and I cannot wait to hear about your next fun activity.
Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.
When you bundle your renters and auto insurance with Progressive, you could save money, but it doesn't cover any terrible memories living rent-free in your head.
Remember when one of your best players got injured, but not like on a play or anything? He got injured celebrating a play, and it's not like it was a game-winning play or in the playoffs, and he was out the rest of the season because he was injured while celebrating? Yeah.
Sorry, we can't save you from that memory, but we could save you money bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Coverage from Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and third-party insurers. Renters insurance and bundle discount.